Hello, I am Dubach, and tonight, my friends and I will take turns reading you scary stories. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the horror. I ran as fast as my legs could take me, never fast enough. The boardwalk rumbled under our feet the closer we got to the end. I couldn't slow down, not yet. We slammed into the wooden railing, kicking dirt and rocks into the waves below. "You took off, you big cheat," I panted. "Maybe I'm just faster, Michael." Rico rubbed in. Little Mikey came screaming down the boardwalk moments later. Ma made me bring him with us. It was supposed to be just me and Gabby. Everything was ruined. "Why don't you win her a big stuffed animal or something?" Rico suggested. "She ain't into that girly stuff. Can you watch little Mikey for one ride? Come on, I'll give you $5. 10. 7. Deal. 7 crumpled dollars clapped between our hands, and we shook on it. I turned, and there she was, Gabriella Giuliani.
"You guys ready or what? Let's hit Harry's haunted house."
Gabby pointed to the giant werewolf head. Its jaw fell open to let us in. "You guys go ahead," I said nervously. "Looks too scary for little Mikey." Great. Gabby thought I was a wimp. Little Mikey followed me into the arcade. I pretended to play one of the games, and he copied. That'd keep him busy. All the games looked lame and outdated. Then one called out to me. "Does desire design dubious deeds? Do deals demand dangerous debts?" It spoke behind dark glass, though the machine didn't seem to be plugged in. I kicked it to life, a flickering display of yellow lights. The coin slot button was too small for a coin, and I didn't have one anyhow. It read, 1 year. I pushed it in, and something pricked my thumb through the slot. "Hey, what the fuck?" I staggered back, thumb in mouth. A hint of metallic touched my tongue as the machine wound its gears. Yellow eyes smoldered behind the glass. "What wonders wait while wishes wonder? What should we win? What should we wager?" A wish? What did I want? To impress Gabby. I wish I could beat Rico. I waited for a reaction in the hum of tired bulbs. What a ripoff. When the others came back, I challenged Rico to a rematch. "There's like 100 games here, Michael. How about a shootout?" Rico handed me a BB gun tied to a short rope. "You're on." I squinted one eye and aimed at the clown's piano teeth. I managed to knock 2 out with 6 shots. Damn it. Rico snatched the gun from my hands. Couldn't he just let me win? He held steady, both eyes open. The shot bounced back with a loud ping. "Ow, fuck!" Rico yelped with both hands over his eye. He got patched up at the first aid booth and called his dad to come get him. Before he left, he handed me the leftover change from our broken deal. Gabby called home to check in while I confronted the wish machine. "Hey, what the hell was that?" I demanded. A light blinked. "No refunds." Okay, smartass. "I wish Gabby would like me." "Can careful conditions conquer clever contracts?" Yeah, careful conditions. I needed to be more clear about what I wished for, so no more bad things would happen. I pushed in the button with my other thumb, and it pricked me a second time. "I want to hold Gabby's hand," I declared as the gears clicked behind that glowing stare. The night dragged on. Little Mikey wasn't tall enough for any of the fun rides. I wasn't getting anywhere. I had to get rid of him. "Hey guys, how about a caramel apple?" They smiled at me as I counted $4 and some change from my pocket. "Just wait right here." I made a detour on my way to the snack bar for one last desperate wish. I stabbed a finger on the button and told the machine my terms. "I want little Mikey to stay right here until I come back. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. Got it?" "Stipulations secure safety sanctions. Someone stays, someone strays." Its grin seemed to widen, and I thought I could hear laughing as I ran off. I made it back with the apples and saw Gabby's mother. Rats. Was she picking her up already?
Hey, Michael, your little brother is so cute. Why don't I take him to pet the animals while you two go on one more ride?
Gabby's mother spoke insistently, taking my brother's hand. What a lifesaver. We could go on the Ferris wheel? I suggested shyly.
Kinda cheesy.
She replied.
What about axes of agony?
The twin axes swung higher and higher, till they cut past each other at the top. I couldn't think of a less romantic way to end the night, but she sounded so excited. I regretted not getting her that stuffed animal as the safety bar clicked into our laps. No going back. We swayed side to side and gained speed with every drop. I gripped the bar.
Let's go, Michael. Here it comes.
She grabbed my hand and held it in the air. My eyes shut tightly as we scraped past the other axe full of screaming riders. We settled at the bottom. It was all over, but our hands still held each other. I had never felt happier. When my eyes opened, Gabby was gone. I looked in my hand and it still held hers, but she was no longer attached. Screams echoed through the boardwalk as I slowly made my way back to Gabby's mom. What was I going to say? Bodies fell from faulty rides and burning animals jumped off the pier. I pushed through the panic of people pouring out of the arcade. My little brother sat on the floor in front of the wish machine. He looked down at his hands, all 10 fingers spotted with blood. Little Mikey, what did you wish for?
So, my mum just died. Well, not just, but like a month ago. And these past few hours, my life has completely unraveled. She went out for a walk, and according to a doctor I talked to at the hospital, she experienced something called an aneurysm, fell down, and was effectively dead before she even hit the ground. There was no pain, no fear, nothing, people told me. But now, I'm not 100% sure I'm okay with that. But let me start at the beginning. I had a happy childhood, all in all. Loving parents, friends, everything. But something changed when I was 17. I was in a small accident. Nothing too major, but I ended up in the hospital where I found out that my blood type didn't match either of my supposed parents. Like, completely different. Both of them have B. I have AB, which means they can't be my biological parents. The realization hit me, and while I tried to rationalize it, I felt like the rug had been pulled from under me. Mum noticed almost immediately, and after a bit of prodding, I finally confided in her. She was shocked, to say the least, then admitted that I had been adopted as a young child, but that both she and her husband saw me as nothing but their own miracle. Honestly, I don't think I took it well, at least for a time. I felt this strange distance between us, which made me lash out at them. But Mum and Dad gave me space and time until I came around on my own. They were still my Mum and Dad after all, right? Things returned to normal, at least for a while. School was a great distraction, as were my hobbies, but slowly I began questioning everything about myself. How much of what I liked was influenced by my adoptive parents? Who was I, after all? If my bio mum hadn't wanted me, did that mean I was a mistake? I would have loved to go back to normal with my parents, to let things be, but I just couldn't. After a particularly bad week, I asked my mum about the adoption, but she told me that it was a closed one and that my bio mum wanted no contact with me. That almost sent me spiraling completely. I don't know, I blame myself, even though I knew it couldn't be my fault, but I really felt like everything around me was crumbling. Mum tried to calm me down, but I just couldn't let it go. I cried and begged her for more information, but every time I brought it up, she tried to change the topic. At night, when I couldn't sleep, I heard my parents arguing in their bedroom. Hushed voices, sometimes crying as well. We were breaking apart, I thought, and I think Mum felt it too. A bit over a week after the first outburst, she and Dad sat me down and filled in the gaps as best they could. I asked about which agency had facilitated the adoption. There was none. Nope. According to Mum, their finding me was a gift from God. They had always wanted to have children, but it just wasn't meant to be. Fertility problems and the like. They visited every doctor they could find until one day, one of them took her aside and straight up told her that giving birth wasn't in the cards for her. The news destroyed her and Dad. Then, not even a month later, while she was out shopping in a city an hour from here, she met a homeless woman, addicted to drugs and obviously unable to take care of herself. She was out begging with a baby in her arms, and that sight broke my mum's heart again. Wanting to help her, she offered her money and a place to stay, but it was clear to her that the woman wouldn't manage it all on her own. So she made a deal with her. She would support her in getting clean, and while she was in rehab, my now mum and dad would take care of me. Apparently, the woman did get better, at least a bit, but as she saw how great mum and dad were with me and how much healthier and happier I looked, she didn't have it in her to take me back. She saw that they could provide a life for me that she never could. So she asked my parents to take care of me and bid them farewell, making them a promise to keep her existence a secret from me, since she felt too much shame to ever face me. My mum was crying at that point, hugging me and apologising over and over, and I simply broke down. I was relieved, to be honest. My bio mum had loved me, even more than I could ever imagined. She had given me up to save me. We hugged and cried for hours, and for the first time in months, I felt like I belonged again. Well, when Mum died and I came back for the funeral, I found my dad in a bad state. He was drinking, something he had never done before, and I extended my stay to help him through the difficult times. It was hard seeing him like this, barely dressed, unshaven, stashing alcohol around the house. It was pitiful, and I thought I should do something to cheer him up. I told him that I wanted to find my bio mum to tell her about the amazing woman she had left me with, how much my life had changed and how great it had been because my mum was there for not just her, but me as well. Dad scoffed, and I felt this strange gnawing feeling in my chest as I heard him. It wasn't a noise I had expected. Not one somebody would make if they simply didn't like an idea. No, it sounded dismissive. Disgusted. I asked him why, but he pulled back and just took another big sip straight from the bottle of vodka. This I really couldn't let go. I asked him what Mum up in heaven would think of the way he was behaving right now, And he laughed, then cried, then sank to the floor.
We're all going to hell anyway,
he mumbled, as I pulled the bottle from his grasp and helped him to the couch. He was saying other stuff, but his speech was so slurred I couldn't really make out what he was trying to say. What I definitely heard was the name of the city, the one Mum had visited when she had met the homeless woman. This strange feeling came over me. Maybe I should have just stopped there. Let sleeping dogs lie. But I couldn't. I made sure Dad was resting on the couch with a bucket next to him and a glass of water on the table, then headed up to my old room where my laptop stood. It took me 2 hours before I found something. I had to go through hundreds of pages and search prompts, year by year, month by month, until I stumbled upon a website someone had put up 17 years ago. The first thing I saw was a giant picture of a baby. "Have you seen me?" in bold letters underneath. Then a family picture. A mum, a dad, and the same baby. Happy and smiling. Next is a video. It's of a woman begging with tears in her eyes to give her back her little baby girl. I've watched it a few times and every time my heart wants to break. She's begging and pleading and even bargaining. I guess no one ever helped her. Below there's her story and another video. The first time I read it, I thought I might throw up. The woman was out with her husband shopping when her baby started crying. Not wanting to bother other customers, the father took the baby to walk around the parking lot and calm her down, while the mother stayed inside the shop. This is where the video starts. You can see the parking lot and the man holding a screaming baby, slowly walking past the row of cars. The whole scene looks so normal, so calm. At least until a new woman appears. She has darker hair. Her head is pointed away from the camera and she abruptly stops and stares at the man with the baby. My heart sank as I saw it. The way she moved was so familiar. Suddenly, she starts speeding up her steps, and the man sees her, but he doesn't react at all. He just smiles and tries to say something, but the woman completely ignores him. I don't think he realised what was about to happen. Not until it was too late. She runs the last few steps as if she wants to tackle him, then reaches out as the man lets out a shriek. You can see her hands grabbing hold of the baby as the man struggles. Then she kicks him and rips the child out of his hands. There's pandemonium. The man reaches out, grabs her coat, and suddenly the woman starts screaming.
Help! Help! He wants to steal my baby!
People are looking over at them. The man, kneeling and holding onto her, looks up at her, and for a moment, you can see the woman's face from the side. I threw up. The voice. The face. It's Mum. She kicks him again as people race toward them and tackle the man to the ground. Now he's screaming too, but 3 guys are holding him down and punching him while the woman with the baby runs away. The video cuts out there. It took the real mother of the child to come out for people to realise what had happened, but the other woman had already disappeared. The creator of the page writes about how the police have been useless and plastered that single still image of the side of the woman's face all over the website. begging people to help her find either the woman or the baby. There's one last video. A short plea by the mother directed at the dark-haired woman I called Mum for 17 years.
Please give him back or let me know she's okay.
I had to stop for an hour, then looked through the website to find my real mother's name. Mary Ann. She had a blog linked to the site, and reading it broke me. The despair, the loneliness, the shame. Her husband, my real father, killed himself 2 years after my disappearance. He blamed himself, and I guess he couldn't live with the guilt anymore. My real mother kept going on her own. For 15 years, she kept looking and kept the site alive, posting it and linking it wherever she could. There are hundreds of links to it, but none of them help. Half a year ago, she posted one last message. I can't do this anymore. I am sorry. To my husband, I failed you. To my child. If you should ever read this, I am so sorry. To the woman who took you, let me say this. I hope hell exists, and that one day I will find you there. There is no justice in this world. Her obituary is 4 months old at this point. She gave up. What do I do now? My parents are dead, killed by grief and hopelessness. The ones who are ultimately responsible died as well. Peacefully. Only one person left is sleeping drunk off his arse on the couch downstairs. What do I do?
A series of short horror stories, written and read by Jack Harrison. Sergeant Peter stared out into the void. Nothing in his life had ever been so ecstatic, so humbling in the expanse of the entire universe. To simply be a part of it had always made his heart feel heavy, but so alive at the same time. His most recent journey around the entire planet had always been a dream of his. The big, beautiful blue marvel in an ocean of stars and black voids. To stand out amongst all of them was just so enlightening, so mysterious, and it filled him with such a sense of pride that he didn't know what to do with himself nor his own feelings when he could reach his hand out and still feel the coldness of the void, and still reconcile with the warmthness of his home world. He was about to cry out. He was about to cry out in pure bliss, pure happiness, until he saw something that made his soul turn into ice. He saw the sun, not the vibrant yellow radiance of an eternal gas giant. He saw something worse than that. The sun was shrinking. The sun was shrinking by something else that seemed to be approaching from the void. Something so magnificent, something so terrifying that he just couldn't be able to properly process it. With slow, rising dread, he knew what it was. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a series of asteroids. It was a god. a god of the void, a god of eternal darkness, a god of the stars, and it was coming for the planet. An all-consuming hunger and sense of fear, a sense of submission filled his blood as he watched. He watched the beast, this god, this being above him, devour Earth, the blue marvel he once called home. Story number 2. My mom has always said demons don't exist. They're just figments of my imagination, not real. But I'm always terrified whenever she reveals her horns and her sharp claws around me. Story number 3. Many years ago, there was a man who lived in the sewers. He dubbed himself the Rat Emperor, or Lord of the Rats. 2 days ago, social services found his body in the sewers, being partially eaten by the rats. Story number 4. I always hated hearing those crickets chirping at night. That unbearable sound that they always made, it drives me nuts. Now, every time they do chirp, I pray they start chirping again, so I know that that beast that screams in the forest is gone. Story number 5. My sister said, "How about some coffee? It's been a while since we had coffee together." I said it would be alright. The truth is, I don't know how much longer I could stand looking at her grinning corpse in that driver's seat. Story number 5. I hate being sick. That feeling of being trapped inside your own body while your body is desperately trying to get rid of some foreign invasion is just so exhausting to me. And every time I do open my eyes whenever I can from this illness, I could still see their bodies, their grinning corpses, those caricatures of human corpses smiling at me. They're waiting for me to fall asleep again, knowing I won't be able to wake up and fight them back. Story number 6. I don't think my girlfriend is human. I still love her, but something about her just doesn't feel the same way. She doesn't seem to sleep, she doesn't eat, I haven't seen her brush her teeth or take a shower, but worst of all, she's always smiling. She always has that weird, unsettling, ear-to-ear smile that just rubs me the wrong way. Every single time of day, night, weekends, weekdays, work, no work, events, she's always right there in the shadows, just smiling at me and me only. I don't know if I have the guts to tell her I want to leave or end this relationship. I hope she takes the news lightly. I can't imagine what she's going to do to me.
I lasted 11 nights at the Black Ridge radio tower. On the 12th night, the emergency phone warned me not to answer the emergency phone. I laughed when I heard that. I thought it was interference, a prank, maybe my own tired brain turning static into words. 20 minutes later, I heard my own voice come through the receiver. It said, "Don't tell him your name." That was 3 days ago. I'm writing this because I don't know how much longer the tower is going to keep letting me use the internet. I took the job because I needed money. That's always how these things start. The listing said, "Night watch operator needed, remote tower site, no experience required, temporary contract, housing provided during shift." The pay was better than anything else I could find, and the job sounded simple. Sit in a cabin, record signal readings, make sure the generator didn't fail, and call someone if the tower lights went out. I had done worse jobs for less money. Black Ridge Radio Tower sat 40 miles outside the nearest town, past a locked service gate and a dirt road that looked like it hadn't been maintained in years. My car complained the entire way up. The tower itself was enormous. Red and white steel, rising out of the trees like a warning sign. At the base was a small concrete cabin with one window, one door, and a satellite dish that looked older than I was. There was no cell service, no nearby houses, and no passing cars. Just trees, wind, and that tower, humming above everything. A man named Harris was waiting outside when I arrived. He looked like he had been awake for a week. "Daniel?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me a keyring. "Door, gate, generator. Don't lose them." That was his introduction. Inside, the cabin was cramped but clean. 1 desk, 1 cot, 3 radio consoles, a wall of blinking equipment, a coffee machine, and a logbook. There was also a beige landline phone mounted beside the door. Old plastic, a curled cord with a cracked receiver. I pointed at it. "That still works?" Harris looked at the phone. "Unfortunately." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. The job was exactly what the listing said. Every hour, write the signal readings in a logbook. Every 2 hours, check the generator panel. If the red tower stopped blinking, report it. If weather got bad, stay inside. Then Harris gave me the rules. He didn't make them sound dramatic. That was the worst part. "Don't leave the cabin between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. "Why?" "Because people do stupid things when they're tired." That was believable enough. "Don't turn off the radio, even if you hear interference." Okay. "If someone knocks, don't open the door." I looked at him. Who's going to knock out here? Harris didn't answer. He then pointed at the beige phone. "If that rings after 2 a.m., answer it immediately." I stared at him. Wait, I shouldn't open the door, but I should answer the creepy phone? He finally looked at me properly. "Yes." What do I say? "Tower site, nothing else." Nothing else? "Nothing personal." What if they ask who I am? "Don't tell them." Why? Harris zipped his coat. "Because once it has your name, it calls back." I smiled because I wanted him to smile too. He didn't. Before leaving, he paused in the doorway. "One more thing." What? "If the caller says something is behind you, don't turn around until the line goes dead." Then he walked out. I watched his truck disappear across the access road. After that, the mountain became very quiet. The first night was boring, almost disappointingly boring. The equipment hummed. The tower blinked right outside the window. The wind moved through the trees, and every hour I wrote down numbers I didn't understand. At 2:13 a.m., the phone rang. I nearly spilled my coffee. The sound was too loud for the cabin. Sharp, mechanical, and old. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Tower site." Static filled the receiver. Then a woman said, "The generator will stall in 9 minutes." Her voice was calm and flat, not robotic exactly, just empty. I didn't say anything, and she continued. "When it stops, wait 30 seconds before going outside." Who is this? Wait 30 seconds. The line went dead. 9 minutes later, the generator alarm screamed. The lights flickered, then cut out. The radio equipment stayed alive on backup power, glowing green in the dark. I waited 30 seconds, then I went outside. A thick branch had fallen across the service line beside the generator. It was still swinging slightly when I reached it. If I had gone out immediately, I would have been standing under it. I restarted the generator with shaking hands. When I came back inside, the phone was slightly off the hook. I was sure I had hung it up. Harris returned at 6:05. He took one look at me and said, "Phone ring?" I nodded. "What did it say?" I told him, and he didn't look surprised. "Did you give your name?" "No." "Good." "Who is she?" Harris poured coffee into a paper cup. "We don't know." "How long has this been happening?" He looked at the phone. "Long enough." "Why not disconnect it?" "They tried." "And?" "It rang anyway." That was all he gave me. I should have quit after that first shift, but nothing had hurt me. The phone had actually helped me, and I needed the money. So I came back. That's how it gets you, I think. It does one impossible thing, but it keeps you alive while doing it, so you keep listening. The next few shifts were quiet. No phone rang, there was no knocking, and no weird voices. Just wind, static, and the tower blinking red outside the window. By the fourth night, I started thinking maybe Harris had exaggerated everything. Maybe the call was some automated warning system. Maybe the branch had just been a coincidence. Then the phone rang again. 2:13 a.m. Exactly. I picked up. Tower site? Static. The woman said, "Don't look through the window at 3:04. What? Do not look through the window at 3:04. Why? The line clicked dead. I spent the next 50 minutes staring at the clock. At 3:03, I turned my chair away from the window. At 3:04, something tapped on the glass. Once. Then again. And again. Not hard, not desperate, but polite. I kept facing the wall. A man's voice said outside, "Harris." I stopped breathing. "Harris, open up." The voice sounded old, cold, almost normal. The doorknob turned once, but it was locked. Then the voice said, "Daniel, Daniel." My stomach dropped. I had never told the caller my name. The tapping stopped. For a few seconds there was only wind. Then the voice said, "Your mother asked for you." My mother had been sick for years, with cancer. The kind that leaves families pretending to be hopeful because the alternative is unbearable. Nobody at the tower knew that. Nobody should have known that. The radio console crackled. Through the speakers came my mother's voice. "Danny." It sounded exactly like her, weak, tired, and afraid. "Danny, please come home." I almost turned. I'm ashamed to admit that. I knew it wasn't right, but grief doesn't care about logic. Then the phone rang. I grabbed it without looking at the window. The woman whispered, "Do not confirm." "What is outside?" "Do not confirm." The voice outside changed. It became softer, closer. "Danny, Danny, I'm scared." My hand tightened around the receiver. "I know you can hear me," it said. The woman on the phone said, "It knows what you miss, not what you love." Then the line went dead. At 3:04, the tapping stopped. I waited until sunrise before looking at the window. There was one handprint on the glass, from the inside. When Harris arrived, he saw it immediately. His face changed. "He used someone personal." I nodded. "Did you answer?" "No." "Did you say her name?" "No." He looked relieved. That made me angry. "Why didn't you tell me that could happen?" He set his coffee down. "Because if I tell you what it can use, you'll start thinking about it." "So?" "So that it knows where to look." I stared at him. "Who worked here before me?" Harris didn't answer. I pointed at the handprint. "Who worked here before me?" He sighed. "A man named Caleb." "What happened to him?" "He told the caller his name." "And?" Harris looked toward the trees. "After that, the phone stopped ringing once a night." "How often?" "At first, twice. Then every hour. Then even when he wasn't here." "What happened to Caleb?" Harris took a long time to answer. "He heard his daughter crying outside during a storm." I already knew the rest. He opened the door. Harris nodded. "The cameras show him walking out at 3:16 a.m. "And he disappeared?" "No." I frowned. "What do you mean, no?" "The cameras show him walking out again the next night. Same time, same clothes, same storm." He looked at the cabin door. "And the night after that." I didn't know what to say. "Sometimes," Harris said quietly, "he still knocks." I started checking the logbooks after that. There were dozens of them in the bottom drawer of the desk. Most were ordinary, signal readings, weather notes, generator checks. But some had strange entries written in the margins. 213, female caller again. 304, window event, did not look. 316, Caleb outside, do not answer. Caller knew about Emily. Harris refused shift transfer. That name appeared more than once. Emily. I asked Harris about her the next morning. He froze. Where did you hear that? Logbook. He reached for the drawer. I moved in front of it. Who was Emily? His jaw tightened. My daughter. I immediately regretted asking. She worked emergency dispatch, he said. Different site, different job, same company. What happened? He looked older suddenly. She got a call she shouldn't have answered. I waited. She told it her name. That was all he said. On my 9th shift, the woman called at 2:13. Tower site, I said. Static. Then, Harris will arrive at 3:33. Do not let him in. I sat up. Harris isn't scheduled until morning. Do not let him in. Why? The static deepened. Then she said, because Harris died 42 days ago. The line went dead. At 3:33, headlights appeared on the access road. A truck climbed the hill and stopped outside the cabin. Harris stepped out. Same coat, same walk, and the same metal thermos in his right hand. He knocked. Daniel! I couldn't move. Open up. Generator panel's throwing errors. I stood 6 feet from the door. Harris? Yeah? What did you forget? Silence. That question had come from a note I found in the logbook. If Harris comes at night, ask what he forgot. The thing outside laughed softly. My keys. The real Harris never forgot his keys. He had said it on my first shift. Door, gate, generator, don't lose them. The knocking stopped. For a moment I heard breathing on the other side of the door. Then Harris's voice changed into mine. Good, it said, and walked back into the trees. The real Harris didn't arrive that morning. Nobody did. At 6:30 I called the company number from the office phone. A woman answered. When I told her Harris hadn't shown up, she went quiet. Then she said, Who's this? Daniel, night watch at Blackridge. Another pause. Sir, that site's not currently staffed. I almost laughed. I'm standing in the cabin. That's not possible. Why? She lowered her voice. Blackridge was closed after the Harris incident. What incident? The line clicked, disconnected. I searched Harris's name as soon as I got back to town. The article was easy to find. Former tower technician found dead near Blackridge site. 6 weeks before I started, his truck had been found at the service gate. His body was recovered in the trees. Cause of death? Exposure. The article mentioned one strange detail. His wife told police he received several calls from the tower landline the night he died. Blackridge had no scheduled workers that night, no active contract, and no working phone service. That was when I decided I was done. I called the number from the job listing. Disconnected. I checked the company email. The domain didn't exist. I checked my bank account. The payments were real. Every Friday from a company called West Vale Communications. I don't know why that name felt familiar. I just knew I didn't like it. That night at 2:13 a.m., my kitchen phone rang. I don't own a kitchen phone. I found it mounted beside the fridge. Beige plastic, curled cord, cracked receiver. It was the same phone. It rang again, but I didn't answer. It rang for 11 minutes, then stopped. A voicemail appeared on my cell. No missed call, just a voicemail. I played it. Static. Then the woman's voice. You abandon your post. I deleted it. The next morning, the phone was gone, but there were muddy boot prints in my apartment. They led from the front door to my bedroom. Beside my bed was a page from the tower logbook. It was in my handwriting, and I don't remember writing it. 2 a.m. Operator returned. Below that, in different handwriting, name nearly confirmed. I stayed with a friend for 2 nights. Nothing happened there at first. There was no phone, no static, and no knocking. I started to believe that distance mattered. Then my friend asked why someone had left a package for me on his porch. There was no address and no postage. Inside was a keyring with a note. Door, gate, generator. My friend asked what it meant. Before I could answer, every light in his house went out. A radio began hissing somewhere in the dark. He didn't own a radio. The static came from the walls. Then Harris's voice spoke through the house. "Don't make it come down from the tower." My friend told me to leave. I don't blame him. I drove for hours after that, with no destination. Every radio station was static. Every few minutes, voices pushed through. My mother, Harris, the woman, and sometimes mine. At 1:58 a.m., my headlights caught something standing in the road. A deer. Its neck bent too far to one side. It opened its mouth, and my car radio said, "Do not swerve." I didn't. The deer didn't move, and I hit it. Except there was no impact, no sound, and no body. For 1 second, the windshield filled with darkness. Then I was parked outside the Black Ridge cabin, with the engine off. Keys were in my hand. The tower blinked red above me. The beige phone was ringing inside. I don't remember driving there, and I don't remember unlocking the gate, and I do not remember climbing the road. But I was there, and someone was sitting at the desk inside the cabin. I could see him through the window. He was writing in the logbook. Then he looked up. It was me. Not a reflection. Me. Same clothes. Same face. Same cut on my lip where I had bit it during the blackout at my friend's house. The other me stood slowly. He picked up the phone, and I heard him through the door. "Tower site." Static answered. He listened for a moment, then he turned toward the window and smiled, and said my full name. The tower light went out. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was inside the cabin, alone. The logbook was open in front of me. The latest entry read, 3:16 a.m. Operator confirmed. Transmission stable. The access road is gone now. Not blocked, just gone. There are trees where the road used to be. I tried walking through them yesterday. After 20 minutes, I came back out behind the cabin. The phone still rings every night at 2:13. Sometimes it's the woman. Sometimes it's Harris. Sometimes my mother. Last night it was me as a child. I haven't told the caller my name, not directly, but I think it has enough of me now. A truck is coming up the road. That shouldn't be possible. There is no road anymore. I can see the headlights through the trees. A man just stepped out. He looks tired. He's holding a keyring, and there's someone behind him. A new guy. Young, nervous, desperate. The way I looked. Then the phone rang. I answered it. The woman said, "Train him well." Outside, the man who looks like Harris is pointing at the cabin door. The new guy is asking if the phone still works. Harris is looking through the window at me, smiling. The tower light just stopped blinking, and from somewhere in the trees, thousands of voices whispered my name.
The only sound was the creak of the floorboards under my feet, and a stray, idle cough from a guard attempting to keep warm, or the chink of plate on chain mail. These weren't the best soldiers. The best and brightest died months ago. The apprehension was the worst part. They would attack tonight. just as they had before. Holding my spear in my hand and blinking to force my eyes open, I needed to stay awake. Nearby, there were buckets at one time arrows would have been stored inside, now empty, the Fletcher having passed away many weeks ago, moving my attention from my sleeping father to the tree line of the neighboring mountain for any signs of fire or the movement of men. My aged father snored at my feet, wrapped in a blanket to keep the cool air out, and I wasn't supposed to be up here with him. In his youth, his armor fit, and now it was torn at the belly and too loose around the shoulders. The old man should have been in his hut resting, but already our numbers had been cut down. Everyone now had to assist. Fortunately, the possessive mist had faded, allowing sight to become useful. Leaning the spear on the wall, my hands rested on the old, damaged stone battlement and saw the other guards. Boys who had just passed into adulthood also manning the walls. Or old men, just like my father. Twin flame torches on either side of the gate. The stone gatehouse had missing stonework from a siege 50 long years ago. It held strong. There was a burst of flame from the haystack that moved across and spread quickly. Fire arrows were fired over the walls, hitting parts of the structure, and without people to put it out, it spread, as did panic. The smoke concealed my view, and the cry went out to put the fires out. The aroma of burning pitch and oil filled my nostrils, when a flurry of loud screams echoed with the shouting of men. The drawbridge lowered, cracking while it did so, allowing the vanguard of the enemy to enter, with men-at-arms penetrating. I don't know how they managed to get inside. Turning to my father, smacking his arm and shaking him violently. "Wake up! Wake up! They're inside!" I urged, pulling him to his feet and wrapping my arm around his shoulders, grabbing the spear to defend ourselves while we shuffled toward the door, pushing on it once, twice, and realized it was locked from the inside, locking us outside. There was no way to get down safely. He squeezed my arm, and a low moan echoed from his lips. I thought it was from fear, and his mind had not yet recovered from slumber. "Don't worry. They never stay. They always leave by morning. We'll get out then." I comforted him, or rather, us. His bony hands curled tight, piercing into my skin. I cried out and kept going. I couldn't see any ladders or rope down that would allow us to escape, and my father just wouldn't make it down. Ignoring the chewing sound behind me, he tried to push me away. I figured fear was causing him to worry. The lower parts of the walls were being overrun with enemy soldiers. While they advanced, they put out the fire to protect themselves. I moved him to rest in the corner where extra supplies were kept before they ran dry. Empty barrels and boxes with heavy stones to throw down on the enemy, helping him sit down, staying in the shadows, and I stood with the spearhead aimed ready to strike. Trembling hands held it, ready and focused. Beneath us, the voices of men made short work of the prisoners, cutting them down with a sword, and this time, I realized they were settling in to maintain the keep as their own. Heavy carts and oxen entered through the gate, followed by a variety of other, smaller livestock. A low gargle came from behind me. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, a heaviness in the back of my throat, and a sticky breath at the back of my neck made my skin crawl. I stepped forward and spun around, holding the spear with both hands across to defend myself. The moonlight allowed me to see my father's now lifeless eyes, his mouth ajar, and bony fingers extended and lunged at me with a vicious snarl. I shoved him back with the shaft of the spear with a grunt, only to be pushed back on the stone wall, and the normal gentle man had long gone. His breath stank. Fresh flesh dribbled down from the few rotten teeth inside his skull, and I saw the fresh wounds on his forearms. He had torn into his own meat. Please, no, I spat, driven by survival, kicking him in the stomach, and gravity forced his head down. I smacked his skull with the butt of my spear, only wishing to knock him down. It didn't work. He sprang to life, using the spear to balance his weight. I used it to keep a distance between us, and we shuffled back and forth. He had come close to biting me, fearing contamination and wondering how and when it happened. Please, Father, please. His eyes were blind, no longer recognizing me as his child, and reason escaped him. Other than the white fog over his eyes from cataracts, they were normal. I pushed him hard, hitting him against a stone, and with his head dangling over the edge, and his stray hair swayed in the breeze. His fingernails dug into my skin. With a yell, I gave a final push, and his body flipped, falling over the ramparts and landing on the hard ground below with a loud crunch. The men below stared up at me, and fear gripped me, knowing I too would be hunted down. Patricide was never forgiven, and now they knew I was here. Moving away from the edge and dropping down, sliding my back down the stone wall, my spear draped across my knees and my head lowered, hands clasped together to ready myself to pray. I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Looking over the edge, I considered throwing myself off and landing down below. Death would be better than what the soldiers would do to me. I expected the door to burst open, but instead faint light appeared when the sun rose of the day of my personal disaster. Standing with stiff joints, using the spear to support my weight, and looking down below, my father's corpse remained where it had fallen, slumped and broken, a pool of blood surrounding him. The courtyard was filled with men resting in their armor. Men sat under the shades of awnings. Fresh livestock had been brought inside. Sheep and goats, when our own had been removed, cooped up in pens, while a pair of oxen grazed from a trough. A blacksmith, tending to the damaged weapons and repurposing ours for their cause. The standard had a roaring flame on a sable background. It flew on top of the gatehouse, claiming ownership over the structure and all of the inhabitants. I didn't recognize it. Perhaps it was an invading lord. Deciding now would be my only time to escape. I placed my hands on the surface. The mortar turned to dust in my fingers, causing the stones to fall. If I could make it to the monastery, I could plead for sanctuary, then make my way out. I had family, Aunt Joanna in one of the local towns, if it too hadn't been overrun. I'll stay with them. I'm sure she'd welcome me in. There was a series of horrifying screams down below. I saw people brought out in chains, held at the neck with an iron collar, shackled at the wrists and ankles, the chains connecting them all together. All the older people, peasants and children were let out. They pulled and struggled, but what shocked me was they weren't pulling away. Instead, they were rushing toward the soldiers, their jaws open and hands extended the same way. They behaved like animals. There were some soldiers who held the chains behind and in front, all to keep a balance. The soldiers used halberds to push them inside one of 3 large metal cages on wheels, locking the doors behind them and pulling a heavy chain around it to keep them inside. The corpse of my father twitched and moved. No one could have survived that fall. One of the soldiers walked past, blood on his armor, and struck down on my father's skull with his sword. Grabbing him by the ankles, dragging him through the dirt with no respect for the dead, if that is what he was, throwing him on the ground near one of the cages, with grasping hands reaching out and pulling on his flesh. Large sticks and coal were placed in the center of the courtyard, and a large bonfire before oil was poured on top. A man held a flame torch in his hand, raised it upwards, and tossed it on the fire, instantly lighting up with a spark of flame that danced and twisted before burst, and the heat rose and heavy black smoke emitted. Together, they chanted a hymn in a language I didn't recognize. Sad and solemn. It would have been beautiful if there was no carnage. Gathering around the fire, until a sharp command caused the first of the cages to be pulled over the flames. They may have lost their minds, but they screeched and tried to flee, tearing through each other, ripping up pieces of skin and flesh down to the bone, only to find the iron bars keeping them locked in place. The fire tore at their flesh. Soon, charred remains twitched and moved. Their screams died down to low, groaning moans. The soldiers didn't flee or panic. Their movements were slow, assured, and it raised more questions about them. Who were they? How did they know how to handle these beings? How did they change? Would I too become one of those? The foul aroma filled the breeze until the cries died down, and they wheeled the cage away to the side. Fresh wood was thrown on top, and the second received the same treatment. My stomach turned, vomiting up bile from my empty stomach and clutching it. The scene just as horrific as the first. It was pulled away with the ash remains stagnant, watching while the third and last one was pulled over the renewed flames. It was different compared to the other two, squinting at them, recognizing the prisoners as bandits taken by the guard earlier, who'd been left to rot in the dungeons. I nearly forgot about them. It had been months since they were outside. They were near skeletal, and their strength was beyond what should have occurred. They pulled on the iron bars, jumping and breaking it. A part cracked under the pressure. A cry rang out and the cage was brought over the flames. The soldiers' movement was jumpy, using their halberds to push them back inside, and some struggled with the few scraping past, only to be pierced and pushed back inside. A horrifying shriek ran out into the midday sun. They held it there, taking turns to add more fuel to the bonfire or replace the spears to hold it in place. They rushed, no time for the chanting to renew. The bandits, or the devils, whatever they were now, they just wouldn't burn. All it did was scorch away their rags to reveal naked, leathery flesh. There was no char on their skin. God, they seemed to thrive in the flames. They tried climbing up and through, hour after hour. It didn't work. The sunlight was now fading. It wouldn't be long until it would be nightfall. They hurried now, raising the flames higher and hotter, despite the burns they themselves received. Panic ran through their ranks, and I feared what would occur when night finally claimed the land. One creature, even with a halberd point piercing its thigh, leapt out with a demonic roar. It arched its back, and the knights backed away fearfully. A roaring command from their captain helped them to gain their courage. The creature leapt and grabbed one of the soldiers, biting into his throat and ripping through the chainmail, sending a wave of blood into the air. It was scrawny. How could it do this? It growled, leaping up on top of the roof of the thatch above the animal pens. The goats and sheep squealed and panicked, attempting to break through the wood. There were loud cries, not to let it escape again. How long had they been hunting it? The wounded soldier had a fellow knight's blade shoved through his skull. The same took the time to throw the corpse onto the bonfire, letting it burn. The creature's loud screech echoed loudly. It sniffed the breeze and hopped up onto the stone wall and climbed up vertically. Its eyes glowed in the fading light. They took bows and fired arrows into the creature. 7 arrows pierced its flesh. 1 in its neck, 1 right between the shoulder blades, 1 in the stomach, and the others with 1 in each leg. 2 of those shots would have easily killed a man, or at least knocked him off. Instead, this being only grew enraged. It broke the arrows one by one, dropping them down onto the floor. After making clear eye contact with them, it drew a finger across its throat in a dread warning. Beast-like, with a human's vindictive nature. With the fading light, it was growing stronger, and its bloodlust rose. It leapt down at them with a roar. Long claws from its toes pinned down one of the soldiers, crushing through the breastplate, circling its foot, and ripping the captain's still beating heart from his chest. It held it up in front of his distraught men. The captain stared in disbelief, his mind barely comprehending what was occurring in front of him. The creature leaned down to lick the blood off the surface of the heart, and crushed it, causing the blood to burst in all directions. That broke his men. Without their leader to rally them, they ran in all directions, heading back inside the keep, and the twin doors closed. Barely repaired, I wondered if it was going to work. After an exhale, the creature's intense gaze met my own, unbreaking. My knees trembled, and subconsciously, I shook my head. It prowled toward me, climbing up the stone walls of the battlements, and lifting up the spear to protect myself. It was agonizingly slow. Courage failed me and I turned, using my fist to open the door, rattling it loudly, hoping some survivor would open it and let me escape. A broken, tattered hand appeared over the edge, and soon the intense, unblinking gaze with a lopsided smirk greeted me. I could smell the burnt clothing and skin, but another aroma lingered, clinging to it. Instinctively, I slunk back to where my father and I had been the previous night. There was no escape. It climbed over, no shame in its nudity. Slender, with bones protruding from its frame, hunched over, it walked with bowed legs, and fresh blood coated its body. The broken arrow shaft from its legs pointed out. Seeing the wounds close up was frightening, ungodly. I pointed the spear at it, my body exhausted from a lack of rest and nourishment. It was a feeble warning, but it was all I could do. "Miko," I whispered, a rasp in response. It opened its mouth and revealed both teeth and tongue had been brutally pulled away, leaving it incapable of speech. I hadn't seen this creature dragged inside with the other bandits, and I lived at this castle all my life. How long had it been kept prisoner here? It walked until it could reach out and touch me, if it wished, unfazed by my weapon. Why would it be? A single pointed finger was lowered, placed near the keyhole, and morphed into the shape of a key. Now inserted, it twisted its finger to allow me entrance, and pushed the door open, bowing its head low to its chest, and gestured for me to enter. I didn't want this creature standing behind me where it could attack at will. When I hesitated, I paused at the entrance. There was a low grumble from its throat. I hurried inside, walking down the narrow stairway and relying on memory for the stairs, careful not to lose my footing. The braziers had long gone dark, leaving a pitch-black space, and I expected to hear footsteps behind me. There were none. A cracking sound of stone being crunched, moving around me with no specific location, and only when it brushed my shoulder did I realize it was above me. When I tried to stop and open the door into the tower, it pointed to guide me further down. Without choice, I methodically placed my feet on the uneven stairs, near slipping and clinging to the wall to maintain my balance. As a child, There were whispers about secret passageways used by a coven of witches. It must have been a long time since they were used. Tiny skeletons and dust coated everything. It was difficult to breathe. A hole of light peered through a small gap in the stonework. Leaning close and staring through it, I saw inside the throne room. The Lord's empty throne had been vacant for some time now. It used to be dusted regularly before everything fell into disrepair. A place I'd only visited in passing when the Lord bothered to reside at his estate when the king had banished him from court. Most of the time, he ignored his country estate that funded his life, leaving it in the care of higher-ranked servants. The memory flooded back. Standing by my father's side, barely up to his waist. It was during a dispute with our neighbor over a boundary line. The once luxurious room was Spartan, free of decoration. It was now filled with barrels of food and supplies, while being fortified with the few materials they had. I hadn't seen food like that in months. "Why are you showing me this?" I whispered. "Who are you?" It was nowhere to be found. I couldn't hear its breathing nor the movement while it climbed. I saw it lurking inside the throne room, climbing on the walls, creeping above the oblivious soldiers. Some were injured from the attack, sitting down and wrapping their wounds in bandages. They all avoided each other's gaze. Their shoulders were hunched over and were vastly different from the triumphant men who had stormed the keep last night. A small fire was lit in the center. The old tapestries, now moth-eaten from neglect, were tossed onto the flames. The creature prowled above, not immediately jumping down, and I wondered why. Instead, it seized one who left to relieve himself in one of the adjoining rooms, dragging him into the shadows, and bit into his neck. Silence passed over the hall. The men instinctively froze, and a primal fear warmed them. I debated doing the same. My heart hardened to their suffering. They had attacked us ever since I was young, picking off families one by one, until only the survivors inside the castle grounds remained. Perhaps this was justice. It took another, a squire, a boy barely out of childhood, who was lifted up into the air, and the alarm was raised. Out of reach, it bore its fangs to taunt them. The boy didn't struggle, a vacant look in his eyes, first biting into the youth's cheek to injure and mock its enemy. Then hunger overtook malice. It moved to his neck. Blood flowed and trickled onto the ground. Swords drawn and a cry echoed throughout the great hall. Flame torches were lit, and the brazier's flame in the center grew brighter, bringing light to the shadows. They were ready for their last stand. Each time it fed, it only grew stronger. Flesh filled out on its bones, resembling devils without a horn nor a tail. I have never seen so much death. Limbs were torn off, armor broken. It pierced inside the knight's abdomen, moving upward and pulled out the heart, the favored organ. It held it up like a prize. I didn't look anymore. I couldn't. The bloodshed was intense. Leaning back, unable to look while the carnage raged on, and wondering when I'd be next. Finally, when the bloodshed was at a conclusion and the sound of screaming ceased, I opened my eyes. The corpses lined the floor, and there was no mistaking the chaos that transpired. I was able to see her, naked and without shame, human except for her glowing eyes, her body drenched in blood, and she stared through the peephole in the wall, leaning close. Her eyes were like a beast, and I wondered whether her hunger would extend to me. She smirked, placed her hand between her breasts, and closed her eyes, bowing her head in reverence. Unsure how to react, I did the same, hoping the gesture would appease her. I closed my eyes and some time passed, then opened them, staring into the empty room with the embers barely providing any light. I couldn't see her. Smacking on the bricks, realizing I was stuck inside the passageway and the darkness in a section no one ventured inside, and I imagined perishing in here. Food for the rats. I kept hitting the stonework in hope one would fall loose, or there was a secret button to allow me to escape. Nothing. Seeing the food outside. Minimum supplies perfect for my aching stomach. The shadows and light danced while the days passed. Using my fingernails, trying to pull the stone and mortar apart in a fool's hope to escape. All it did was slightly pry apart the whole to see more. The loaves of stale bread soon became food for hungry rats. However, they craved flesh, and the rotting soldiers were prime targets for their hunger. I stared out at them, licking cracked lips and closing my eyes, with 2 dry tears trying to fall down my cheeks. Clasping my hands together, forehead resting above them, and prepared to murmur a prayer to the Lord, when I heard footsteps walking on the silent floorboards. The rats scurried away to their corners. I lowered my hands, silently staring out into the room and seeing no figure that was the source of the sound. Suddenly, a piece of rotten flesh twisted from the exposed forearm of a corpse. Hand-sized, and it floated toward me, with booming footsteps that got louder. Given the destruction of my life, what harm could occur to me now? I lost everything. The figure, a shadow, loosely in the shape of a tall, slender human, offered me the rotting flesh. The stench greeted me first, turning my stomach with disgust, and then an animalistic hunger rose. It reached out, with an opaque 4 fingers and the palm of its hand outstretched, ready for me to claim it. It held it just out of reach, tempting, teasing, not allowing me to grasp it. My skin pulled on sharp stones, and with a push a stone broke, falling to the floor, allowing my arm to reach out and take it in my hand. The shadow was gone. I knew it wasn't the right thing to do. Perhaps God would grant me forgiveness for doing what I needed to in order to survive. I sank my teeth into the flesh, swallowed quickly to avoid the pungent taste, and it was only a few bitefuls. I didn't notice any immediate change, nor signs of divine retribution. Sucking the fluid off my fingers, with renewed strength I pushed on the old stonework and caused it all to fall, stepping out coated in dust and unsure what to do with my newfound freedom, staring down at the soldiers, half rotten and half eaten. It was tempting to consume what was left. Instead, I picked up the bread, eating what remained, and washed it down with stale ale. No matter how much I filled my stomach, the hunger raged. The smell of the bodies concerned me no longer, and the thought of losing them worried me. Dragging them into position around the Lord's table, the larger chair reserved still for my Lord, and put a chair upright, reaching down with a grunt to lift and seat one of the bodies, his head resting on an empty plate, hands on either side. Next was the squire, lifting him up, his neck cracked and clung on by a thread of skin. 2 would be seated. Finally, all the knights were in their proper position, still in their armor, and walking around them. I knew I shouldn't have done it, pulling out the Lord's chair and taking a seat. I thought he or someone important would appear to chide me, punish me. Nothing occurred. It was mine. It was all mine. I thought of the creature who morphed from a devil to an enchanting woman. Where did she go? I didn't leave the throne room for days, taking a mouthful or 2 from the dead to sustain myself. When I reached and tore at the bread, the smell turned my stomach, and covering my mouth while I tried not to gag, The realization of what I was struck me. I was now a monster, walking into the Lord's quarters, a place I had never been permitted to enter, and open the doors. While covered in a layer of dust, it had been maintained in case he suddenly returned with his family from court. His wife, I'd forgotten the woman's name, and their son who will be an adult soon, along with lesser nobles and hangers-on, climbing on the bed, arms and legs spread in the luxury. I beamed upward in victory of what was now mine. Each day I changed my clothing into another priceless gown, struggling to fit into the strange garment without other servants to assist me. The more I feasted, the stronger I felt. Walking outside, the penned goats and sheep were famished. I let the poor wretches go, and they fled out the open gateway into the areas beyond, their fate no longer my concern. I took a bite of the charred remains of people I no longer felt a connection to, spitting out the ash and kicking them in frustration, cracking their ribs, dragging all the corpses and pushed them over the ramparts into the bog. They fell with a pop of foul air rising before sinking downward, a part of the structure rarely seen, walking away while it claimed them. It was not my sin, and yet I felt worried for what would occur if I was discovered. The sun, even in the morning, burned and itched at my skin. I couldn't erase how empty the keep was. No life other than wandering rats. I saw my reflection in the mirror. A prized piece owned by the Lord's wife, now mine. My face was drawn in. Ash coated my face, and my clothes clung to my body, nearly falling off. Opening a chest to take out one of the lady's expensive gowns, crimson in color and made of damask imported from foreign lands. I have never touched anything so fine. I wanted to bathe in the iron bath, to truly feel like a lady, with warm water being brought up by an army of servants, and unfortunately, the heat of the day had made my limbs weak. With a yawn and heavy eyelids, I lay down to rest, when a feeling of butterflies inside my stomach awoke me. After tossing and turning, the same feeling would not cease, an uneasy one of danger approaching. Walking up to the battlements, seeing horse riders appear on the horizon, heading in the direction of the keep. The Lord was home, and it was fortunate because I was absolutely famished.
It was a great day, it really was. It started out that way anyways. I'm sure I remember, but now it is not a great day. I love going hiking, I really do, but suddenly, I'm not having fun anymore. We've gone to our cabin in the woods before. Many, many times, I remember. It's always been fun, always. The scenery, the wildlife, the fresh air, always. But now, it's getting dark, and I'm alone. I'm not even sure how I ended up here. It smells strange and everything looks the same, but different. Blurry. Something isn't right. I feel it. Wait. Where is James? I know he was here with me a minute ago. I know this. I remember. Get it together. You're losing focus. James. I have to find James. Stand up. My head, my leg, I feel pain. This is the road. I'm on the side of the road. There's blood on me. I'm hurt and James is gone. And I don't know where I am. Start walking. He wouldn't have left me here. He must be close. Something must have happened. I can't remember. Focus. Noise. Lights. Coming toward me. Bright light hurts my eyes. Truck.
Start running.
The lights pass right by. They don't see me. I call out and they don't hear me. It's not James. I'm alone. It's dark now, and I'm alone. Except, I'm not. There's something moving in the woods.
Run faster. No, stop. Wait.
Maybe that's James. Maybe he needs my help. Maybe he's hurt too. I call out. Then something moves deeper into the woods. Is he playing with me?
James.
We've been together for a while, I remember. It took some time for me to trust again, but James has earned it. He took care of me, and I took care of him.
Try to remember.
He didn't leave me. I was with him. And then I wasn't. Darkness in between, it doesn't make sense. Head hurts.
Try to focus.
Another light flashes. Brighter, louder, faster.
Panic.
Someone is after me, and it's not James. A strange voice calls out to me. A strange word I have never heard and do not understand.
Run, now.
Into the woods. I'm safer here than on the road. Whatever happened to me and James happened back there. Just run. Grass, leaves, trees, twigs snap beneath my feet. Branches scrape across my face. I close my eyes, put my head down, and I run.
Wait, stop. Turn around.
No one is chasing you.
Breathe now. Inspect your wounds.
Pain returns. Heart pounds. It's really dark now. Strange sounds, unfamiliar scents. Blood has dried. A twig snaps beside me.
James?
Something is watching me. And it's not James. That smell.
Freeze.
Hair stands on end, rustling. Another twig snaps. I call out, trying to scare away whatever creature is lurking. It works. I am alone again. Our cabin must be close by. I'm sure I remember. I inhale deeply, my pupils widen.
Focus. Think. Remember.
I know these woods. There are others in these woods. James told me about them. Told me not to trust them. The others may even look like me, but they aren't like me. I keep my eyes wide open and move cautiously through the thickness. I hear a scream in the distance.
No sleep tonight.
I'm limping now. The air is cold and the ground is hard. This is not where I belong. I'm not safe. Nothing is right. I feel it. The trees are moving. The stars are spinning. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm tired. I'm scared. But I have to keep walking. I have to find the cabin. I have to find James. I can't let the others see me. I can't let the others catch me. I don't know what happens if they do. But James says I don't want to find out.
Keep walking.
Something sharp on the ground hurts my foot. I yelp out in pain. That was a mistake. Another scream. Much closer this time. And another. And another. The others. They know I'm here. They're coming for me.
Run.
I think the cabin is this way. I hope the cabin is this way. Once I get closer, I'm sure I'll remember. I'll know.
Just run.
Don't turn around. Something is chasing you. Can't call for James. The others will hear me. Can't hide. The others will find me. I have to keep running and hope they don't catch me. I have to keep running as long as my leg lets me. Leaves rustle beside me. Sticks break behind me. The screams are all around me now. The smell is overpowering, driving me further and further away from the cabin, further and further away from James. I know it. I feel it. The others heard my cry. They smell my blood. They sense my fear. They're coming. If only I could remember how I got here. I can't keep running. I can't escape.
Focus.
There's only one option left.
Stop running. Turn around. Try to breathe.
I'm surrounded. Eyes wide open. Muscles tense. Teeth clenched.
They may look like you, but they aren't like you.
Heart pounds. Hair stands on end. The others appear. In front of me, behind me, on all sides of me. They aren't like me. They're bigger. Can't move. Can't breathe. Can't think. I want to tell them to leave me alone, but I know they won't listen. If James were here, he would protect me. He would save me. But he's not here. I'm alone. Surrounded and alone. The others snarl and gnash their teeth at me. They lunge forward and try to claw at me. A bright light flashes. The others stop. A dark figure appears in the distance. It's running towards me.
Freeze.
It's getting closer. Heart pounds. Hair stands on end. A loud bang hurts my ears. The others run away. The bright light hurts my eyes. This is it.
Fight.
There's nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. I call out, telling it not to come any closer. It calls back to me. A word I know. I understand. I remember. Pupils constrict. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. James. I fall into his arm, and he cries. He hugs me. He hugs me harder than he's ever hugged me before. It hurts my head, but I don't care. I'm home now. Home with James again, where I belong. My wounds are dressed, and my belly is full. The air is warm, and the ground is soft. I'm safe. I'm not alone. No pain. Everything is right. I feel it. I know it. I remember. James says I fell from the truck. He doesn't know how. He went back to look for me, but I was gone. He says that he's so sorry, and I forgive him. He never meant for a weekend in the woods to go this way. I knew he wouldn't have left me. He says it will never happen again, and I believe him. I curl up next to James in our bed. He scratches my head, and I close my eyes as he softly says my favorite word.
Good boy.
The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores with dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the past ban which shut him out from the aid and from the sympathy of his fellow men. And the whole seizure, progress, and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. But the Prince Prospero was happy and dauntless and sagacious. When his dominions were half depopulated, he summoned to his presence 1,000 hale and light-hearted friends from among the knights and dames of his court, and with these retired to the deep seclusion of one of his castellated abbeys. This was an extensive and magnificent structure, the creation of the prince's own eccentric yet august taste. A strong and lofty wall girdled it in. This wall had gates of iron. The courtiers, having entered, brought furnaces and massy hammers and welded the bolts. They resolved to leave means neither of ingress or egress to the sudden impulses of despair or of frenzy from within. The abbey was amply provisioned. With such precautions, the courtiers might bid defiance to contagion. The external world could take care of itself. In the meantime, it was folly to grieve or to think. The prince had provided all the appliances of pleasure. There were buffoons, there were improvisatori, there were ballet dancers, there were musicians, there was beauty, there was wine. All these and security were within. Without was the Red Death. It was toward the close of the 5th or 6th month of his seclusion, and while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad, that the Prince Prospero entertained his 1,000 friends at a masked ball of the most unusual magnificence. Oh, it was a voluptuous scene, that masquerade. But first, let me tell of the rooms in which it was held. There were 7, an imperial suite. In many palaces, however, such suites form a long and straight vista, while the folding doors slide back nearly to the walls on either hand, so that the view of the whole extent is scarcely impeded. Here the case was very different, as might have been expected from the Duke's love of the bizarre. The apartments were so irregularly disposed that the vision embraced but little more than one at a time. There was a sharp turn at every 20 or 30 yards, and at each turn a novel effect. To the right and left, in the middle of each wall, a tall and narrow Gothic window looked out upon a closed corridor which pursued the windings of the suite. These windows were of stained glass, whose color varied in accordance with the prevailing hue of the decorations of the chamber into which it opened. That at the eastern extremity was hung, for example, in blue, and vividly blue were its windows. The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple. The third was green throughout, and so were the casements. The fourth was furnished and lighted with orange, the fifth with white, the sixth with violet, The 7th apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same material and hue. But in this chamber only, the color of the windows failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were scarlet, a deep blood color. Now, in no one of the 7 apartments was there any lamp or candelabrum, amid the profusion of golden ornaments that lay scattered to and fro or depended from the roof. There was no light of any kind emanating from lamp or candle within the suite of the chambers. But in the corridors that followed the suite, there stood, opposite to each window, a heavy tripod, bearing a brazier of fire that projected its rays through the tinted glass and so glaringly illumined the room. And thus were produced a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances. But in the western or black chamber, the effect of the firelight that streamed upon the dark hangings through the blood-tainted panes was ghastly in the extreme, and produced so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered that there were few of the company bold enough to set foot within its precincts at all. It was in this apartment, also, that there stood against the western wall a gigantic clock of ebony. Its pendulum swung to and fro with a dull, heavy, monotonous clang, and when the minute hand made the circuit of the face, and the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical, but of so peculiar a note and emphasis that, at each lap of an hour, the musicians of the orchestra were constrained to pause momentarily in their performance to hearken to the sound, and thus the waltzers perforce ceased their revolutions, and there was a brief disconcert of the whole gay company. And while the chimes of the clock yet rang, it was observed that the giddiest grew pale, and the more aged and sedate passed their hands over their brows as if in confused reverie or meditation. But when the echoes had fully ceased, a light laughter at once pervaded the assembly. The musicians looked at each other and smiled as if at their own nervousness and folly, and made whispering vows each to the other that the next chiming of the clock should produce in them no similar emotion. And then, after the lapse of 60 minutes, which embrace 3,600 seconds of the time that flies, there came yet another chiming of the clock. And then were the same disconcert and tremulousness and meditation as before. But, in spite of these things, it was a gay and magnificent revel. The tastes of the Duke were peculiar. He had a fine eye for colors and effects. He disregarded the decora of mere fashion. His plans were bold and fiery, and his conceptions glowed with barbaric luster. There are some who would have thought him mad. His followers felt that he was not. It was necessary to hear and see and touch him to be sure that he was not. He had directed, in great part, the movable embellishments of the 7 chambers, upon occasion of this great fete, and it was his own guiding taste which had given character to the masqueraders. Be sure they were grotesque. There were much glare and glitter and piquancy and phantasm, much of what has been seen in Hernani. There were arabesque figures with unsuited limbs and appointments. There were delirious fancies such as the madman fashions. There were much of the beautiful, much of the wanton, much of the bizarre, something of the terrible, and not a little of that which might have excited disgust. To and fro in the 7 chambers there stalked in fact a multitude of dreams. And these, the dreams, writhed in and about, taking hue from the rooms and causing the wild music of the orchestra to seem as the echo of their steps. And anon, there strikes the ebony clock which stands in the hall of the velvet. And then, for a moment, all is still and all is silent, save the voice of the clock. The dreams are stiff frozen as they stand, but the echoes of the chime die away. They have endured but an instant, and a light half-subdued laughter floats after them as they depart. And now again the music swells and the dreams live and writhe to and fro more merrily than ever, taking hue from the many-tinted windows through which stream the rays from the tripods. But to the chambers which lies most westwardly of the 7, there are now none of the maskers who venture, for the night is waning away and there flows a ruddier light through the blood-colored panes, and the blackness of the sable drapery appalls, and to him whose foot falls upon the sable carpet, there comes from the near clock of ebony a muffled peal more solemnly and pathetic than any which reaches their ears who indulge in the more remote gaieties of the other apartments. But these other apartments were densely crowded, and in them beat feverishly the heart of life. And the revel went whirringly on until at length there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock. And then the music ceased, as I have told, and the evolutions of the waltzers were quieted, and there was an uneasy cessation of all things, as before. But now there were 12 strokes to be sounded by the bell of the clock. And thus it happened, perhaps that more of thought crept, with more of time, into the meditations of the thoughtful among those who revelled. And thus, too, it happened, perhaps, that before the last echoes of the last chime had utterly sunk into silence, there were many individuals in the crowd who had found leisure to become aware of the presence of a masked figure which had arrested the attention of no single individual before. And the rumors of this new presence having spread itself whisperingly around, there arose at length from the whole company a buzz or murmur expressive of disapprobation and surprise. Then, finally, of terror, of horror, and of disgust. In an assembly of phantasms such as I have painted, it may well be supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such sensation. In truth, the masquerade license of the night was nearly unlimited, but the figure in question had out-Heroded Herod, and gone beyond the bounds of even the prince's indefinite decorum. There are chords in the hearts of the most reckless which cannot be touched without emotion. Even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jests, there are matters of which no jest can be made. The whole company, indeed, seemed now deeply to feel that in the costume and bearing of the stranger, neither wit nor propriety existed. The figure was tall and gaunt and shrouded from head to foot in the habiliments of the grave. The mask which concealed the visage was made so nearly to resemble the countenance of a stiffened corpse that the closest scrutiny must have had difficulty in detecting the cheat. And yet, all this might have been endured, if not approved, by the mad revelers around. But the mummer had gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. When the eyes of Prince Prospero fell upon this spectral image, which with a slow and solemn movement, as if more fully to sustain its role, stalked to and fro among the waltzers, he was seen to be convulsed, in the first moment with a strong shudder either of terror or distaste, but in the next, his brow reddened with rage. "Who dares?" he demanded hoarsely of the courtiers who stood near him. "Who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements." It was in the eastern or blue chamber in which stood the Prince Prospero as he uttered these words. They rang throughout the 7 rooms loudly and clearly, for the prince was a bold and robust man, and the music had become hushed at the waving of his hand. It was in the blue room where stood the prince with a group of pale courtiers by his side. At first, as he spoke, there was a slight rushing movement of this group in the direction of the intruder, who, at the moment, was also near at hand, and now, with deliberate and stately step, made closer approach to the speaker. But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the mummer had inspired the whole party, there were found none who put forth hand to seize him, so that, unimpeded, he passed within a yard of the prince's person. And, while the vast assembly, as if with one pulse, shrank from the centers of the rooms to the walls, he made his way uninterruptedly but with the same solemn and measured step which had distinguished him from the first, through the blue chamber to the purple, through the purple to the green, through the green to the orange, through this again to the white, and even thence to the violet, ere a decided movement had been made to arrest him. It was then, however, that the Prince Prospero, maddening with rage and ashamed of his own momentary cowardice, rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers, while none followed him on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft a drawn dagger and had approached in rapid impetuosity to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating figure, when the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, turned suddenly and confronted his pursuer. There was a sharp cry, and the dagger dropped gleaming upon the sable carpet, upon which, instantly afterwards, fell prostrate in death the Prince Prospero. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of the revelers at once threw themselves into the black apartment, and seizing the mummer, whose tall figure stood erect and motionless within the shadow of the ebony clock, gasped in unutterable horror at finding the grave cerements and corpse-like mask which they handled with so violent a rudeness untenanted by any tangible form. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripods expired. And darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. It is said that in Ulfar, which lies beyond the river sky, no man may kill a cat, and this I can verily believe as I gaze upon him who sitteth purring before the fire. For the cat is cryptic and close to strange things which men cannot see. He is the soul of antique Egyptus and bearer of tales from forgotten cities in Meroe and Ophir. He is the kin of the jungle's lords and heir to the secrets of hoary and sinister Africa. The Sphinx is his cousin, and he speaks her language. But he is more ancient than the Sphinx, and remembers that which she hath forgotten. In Ulfar, before ever the burgesses forbade the killing of cats, there dwelt an old cotter and his wife who delighted to trap and slay the cats of their neighbors. Why they did this I do not know, save that many hate the voice of the cat in the night, and take it ill that cats should run stealthily about yards and gardens at twilight. But whatever the reason, this old man and woman took pleasure in trapping and slaying every cat which came near their hovel, and from some of the sounds heard after dark, many villagers fancied that the manner of slaying was exceedingly peculiar. But the villagers did not discuss such things with the old man and his wife, because of the habitual expression on the withered faces of the two, and because their cottage was so small and so darkly hidden under spreading oaks at the back of a neglected yard. In truth, much as the owners of cats hated these odd folk, they feared them more, and instead of berating them as brutal assassins, merely took care that no cherished pet or mouser should stray towards the remote hovel under the dark trees. When through some unavoidable oversight a cat was missed and sounds heard after dark, the loser would lament impotently, or console himself by thanking fate that it was not one of his children who had thus vanished. For the people of Ulfar were simple, and knew not whence it is all cats first came. One day, a caravan of strange wanderers from the south entered the narrow cobbled streets of Ulfar. Dark wanderers they were, and unlike the other roving folk who passed through the village twice every year. In the marketplace, they told fortunes for silver and bought gay beads from the merchants. What was the land of these wanderers? None could tell, but it was seen that they were given to strange prayers and they had painted on the sides of their wagons strange figures with human bodies and the heads of cats, hawks, rams, and lions. And the leader of the caravan wore a headdress with 2 horns, and a curious disc betwixt the horns. There was in this singular caravan a little boy with no father or mother, but only a tiny black kitten to cherish. The plague had not been kind to him, yet had left him this small furry thing to mitigate his sorrow, and when one is very young, one can find great relief in the lively antics of a black kitten. So the boy, whom the dark people called Minis, smiled more often than he wept as he sat playing with his graceful kitten on the steps of an oddly painted wagon. On the 3rd morning of the wanderer's stay in Ulfar, Minis could not find his kitten, and as he sobbed aloud in the marketplace, certain villagers told him of the old man and his wife, and of sounds heard in the night. And when he heard these things, his sobbing gave place to meditation, and finally to prayer. He stretched out his arms towards the sun and prayed in a tongue no villager could understand, though indeed the villagers did not try very hard to understand, since their attention was mostly taken up by the sky and the odd shapes the clouds were assuming. It was very peculiar, but as the little boy uttered his petition, there seemed to form overhead the shadowy, nebulous figures of exotic things, of hybrid creatures crowned with horn-flanked discs. Nature is full of such illusions to impress the imaginative. That night, the wanderers left Ulfar, and they were never seen again, and the householders were troubled when they noticed that all in the village there was not a cat to be found. From each hearth the familiar cat had vanished. Cats large and small, black, grey, striped, yellow and white. Old Kranon, the burgomaster, swore that the dark folk had taken the cats away in revenge for the killing of Menese's kitten, and cursed the caravan and the little boy. But Nif, the lean notary, declared that the old cotter and his wife were more likely persons to suspect, for their hatred of cats was notorious and increasingly bold. Still, no one durst complain to the sinister couple, even when little Atal, the innkeeper's son, vowed that he had at twilight seen all the cats of Ulfar in that accursed yard under the trees, pacing very slowly and solemnly in a circle around the cottage, 2 abreast, as if in performance of some unheard-of rite of beasts. The villagers did not know how much to believe from so small a boy, and though they feared that the evil pair had charmed the cats to their death, they preferred not to chide the old cotter till they met him outside his dark and repellent yard. So Ulfar went to sleep in vain anger, and when the people awaked at dawn, behold, every cat was back at his accustomed hearth. Large and small, black, grey, striped, yellow and white, none was missing. Very sleek and fat did the cats appear, and sonorous with purring content. The citizens talked with one another of the affair, and marvelled not a little. Old Kranon again insisted it was the dark folk who had taken them, since cats did not return alive from the cottage of the ancient man and his wife. But all agreed on one thing, that the refusal of all the cats to eat their portions of meat or drink their sources of milk was exceedingly curious. And for 2 whole days the sleek, lazy cats of Ulfar who touch no food, but only those by the fire or in the sun. It was fully a week before the villagers noticed that no lights were appearing at dusk in the windows of the cottage under the trees. Then the lean nymph remarked that no one had seen the old man or his wife since the night the cats were away. In another week, the burgomaster decided to overcome his fears and call at the strangely silent dwelling as a matter of duty, though in so doing he was careful to take with him Shang the blacksmith and Fool the cutter of stone as witnesses. And when they had broken down the frail door, they found only this: 2 cleanly picked human skeletons on the earthen floor, and a number of singular beetles crawling in the shadowy corners. There was subsequently much talk among the burgesses of Ulfar. Zaf, the coroner, disputed at length with Nif, the lean notary, and Cranon and Shang and Fool were overwhelmed with questions. Even little Atal, the innkeeper's son, was closely questioned and given a sweetmeat as a reward. They talked of the old cotter and his wife, of the caravan of dark wanderers, of small Minas and his black kitten, of the prayer of Minas and of the sky during that prayer, of the doings of the cats on the night the caravan left, and of what was later found in the cottage under the dark trees in the repellent yard. And in the end, the burgesses passed that remarkable law which is told of by traders in Hafek and discussed by travelers anear, namely, that in Ulfar no man may kill a cat.
Ever since I was a small girl, I remember my grandmother drinking afternoon tea. Every day, she would sit at her table, dressed in one of her many expensive gowns, and sip on a cup of hot tea. She had never offered me any until my mother died. I arrived at Grandma's estate 3 days after my mother's funeral. It had been 20 years since I had seen her last, but her home was still as extraordinary as ever. Nestled on 50 acres of classic English countryside was her enormous British manor. Located deep in Suffolk County, amidst rolling green hills, is a grand iron gate, whose bars hide the place where childhood dreams are made. Behind its guard runs a long cobblestone driveway that gently meanders through perfectly shaped maple trees. It is nearly 3 miles before you reach the clearing where the manor lay, rising above intricately designed flower gardens that cascade downward to the driveway. At the base of these colorful gardens, guarding the entrance, is a hand-carved marble water fountain. Inside the crystal blue water is a 20-foot statue of Aphrodite, standing nude with long flowing hair draped over her breasts, stationed in a seductive pose. Her stone eyes glare out at all who approach. On the east side of the property are the stable grounds. I would spend countless hours there learning to ride the most beautiful horses money could buy. I stepped from the black Rolls-Royce, which had shuttled me from the gate, and stood, taking in the exquisite home. It was 3 stories of classic British architecture, modelled from Kensington Palace. It rose from the ground like a historic stone wonder. For 2 weeks every summer, it became my personal playground. And my God, did I love it here. I walked up the granite stairs, pictures of my mother's funeral under my arm, to the massive oak door. I rang the bell and took a deep breath, repressing my anger deep inside. Mr. Jeffrey, my grandma's head servant, greeted me at the door.
"Hello, madam. It's a pleasure to see you again,"
Jeffrey said, bowing his head as I stepped inside. Hello, Jeffrey. It has been a very long time.
"Far too long, I must say. I have missed you dearly. You are a woman grown."
My grandmother sent for me. I was told it was urgent. I replied coldly. I was in no mood for idle chatter.
"You will find her in the tea room. Does my lady need to be refreshed of its location?"
"I know where it is," I said and turned away.
"Miss, where are your bags? I've made up your old room, just the way you like it."
"I will not be staying long, Jeffrey," I snapped back and walked from the foyer.
"I am sorry to hear that. I hope you reconsider."
I entered the grand hallway, where hundreds of exquisite pieces of artwork adorned the walls. My grandma obsessively collected them over her lifetime. Many were hundreds of years old, and she often bragged how some were painted by the Renaissance masters. It was mind-boggling how much money this old woman had. I never thought much about it as a child, but now it seemed obscene that one person should have this kind of wealth. My heels clicked rapidly inside the grand corridor, reverberating off the 20-foot ceilings. With each step, I became even angrier. Oil paintings, sculptures, and stained glass littered the walls, each piece worth thousands of dollars. The place reeked of opulence. How could a person so filthy rich leave her child completely defenseless? Just one of these paintings could have provided my mother the care she so desperately needed. I stormed through the French doors and found my grandma sitting at her tea table, sipping from the same weathered teacup she had always used. Compared to the rest of her things, it was odd that she used such a simple cup. "Hello, Teresa," she said quietly, looking my way with her piercing gray eyes. They were as brilliant as ever. "Hello, Grandma," I chided. "Please sit with me, child." I sat down at the perfectly set table, fuming on the inside. It lay inside a magnificent room, whose architecture utilized many intricate arches and columns. Lavish artwork filled the space on the walls, and the marble statues of nude men and women looked on with steady eyes. The ceiling rose 30 feet to a golden dome, highlighted with an incredible Byzantine-style mosaic. It was more a museum than a place for tea. Grandma's chair faced a wall of windows, which peered out into vast gardens behind the estate. Gardens which required its own full-time staff to maintain. The polarity of our lives could not be more striking. "How is Cassandra?" she asked. "Please, do not feign interest in my daughter's well-being," I said, the words bursting forth. "I did not fly halfway across the globe to indulge in small talk." "Go ahead, child. I imagine you have many strong words for me." "How dare you? You cold and heartless bitch," I said, staring at her, unmoving. There was a hint of guilt deep behind her gray irises, but nothing more. "You wonder how I could miss the funeral of my only daughter. I bet it quite unimaginable from your perspective. Do you know that she called out for you under her dying breath? She wept like a small child, begging for her mother as she passed. You were not there, like always. Instead, you sat, hiding here inside your castle. Mothers are not supposed to outlive their own daughters. Being a mother, I assume you understood that. She replied. Nothing I said had gotten through. I wanted to reach out, grab her turkey neck, and squeeze. That does not make it right. You left her cold, alone, and penniless as she slowly deteriorated. Look at this place. All this money, and you couldn't spare a nickel for your dying daughter? I said, seething with anger now. I understand. You are not wrong, child. And why couldn't we visit more often? Once a year you would bring us here, to this fantasy land, a place you used to your advantage. You knew its power, the seductive force it had on me as a child. You must have thought it may make Mom and I forget how little you were there. Well, it didn't work. My mother knew. And as I grew older, I came to understand it too. I am so sorry, but it had to be that way. It is hard to understand now, but that is why I brought you here. It is time you learn the truth. I don't want to hear the pathetic excuses of a bitter old woman. Talking to you is meaningless. I had hoped that maybe you would exhibit a sliver of regret. But there is nothing here but an old woman and her things. No matter how many pretty horses and fancy things you gave us, in the end, it didn't buy our love. We knew it was all fake, just like the woman who gave it. I said, getting up from the chair. It was time to leave. Teresa, wait. You can leave, believing whatever you may about me. But please, let an old woman speak, if only this last time. Spit it out then, I said. Look at you, dear. The last shreds of youth has left you. It is plain for all to see. What did you say? I said, facing her, astounded by her words. The gall of this woman was incredulous. You used to be so beautiful. Flowing long black hair, which shone brightly, even under the darkest of nights. A physique so flawless that you had your first modeling contract by the 7th grade. You were a beacon of youth and beauty to all those around you. But that has all vanished, gripped by Father Time's heartless grasp. You can continue to dye your hair, but the grey will always return, peeking up from your roots for everyone to see. And that skin, which you so foolishly aged from all that heavy partying in your 20s, that will only get worse. But worst of all was your daughter. What her birth did to your body is impossible to hide. You are a poor single woman, closing on 50 with a teenage daughter. Do you think another man will look upon you as so many did long ago? How dare you! I screamed, a lone tear leaving my eye. I hated to admit it, but she was right. Once I was the most beautiful woman in any room I entered. But age is not kind to pretty women. It comes like a monster, eating away your identity, turning it into a shell of who you used to be. Then it mercilessly rips away the man you love and points him in the direction of a newer, better model. I am sorry, but it's true. Time always wins. It will only get worse until you are old and alone. This must be a horrible perspective for you, Teresa. You did always prefer the attention of extraordinary men. Average never quite cut it with you. Please, stop. Why are you doing this? I came here hoping you would show some remorse, but instead I come and you insult me. You are truly pathetic. I hope when your time comes, you remember how you left your daughter to die alone. Goodbye. I hope you rot in hell, alone and afraid, and by the look of you, death cannot be far off, I said, walking from the room. If you leave, I cannot help you. Screw you, Grandma. You can't help me. You have never helped anyone but yourself. You can have it all back. The perfect hair, the beautiful face, your angelic skin, and best of all the elite male attention I know you desire. It can all be yours again, she said, smiling. This woman had truly lost it. Are you mad? You said it yourself, I'm almost 50. There is nothing I can do. You are mistaken, Teresa. I can give it all back. Just sit down and let me speak. 5 minutes is all I ask. I don't need your money. I refuse to become some hacked-up plastic monster. I am not suggesting plastic surgery. What I offer is a miracle. I cannot believe I'm doing this. You have 5 minutes, I said, and reluctantly sat down. How old do you think I am? She asked. It was an interesting question, and one I had pondered before. My grandma's age was always a mystery. She had always looked like an old woman, but she had rarely moved like one. Her mind was always sharp, and I had never heard about her getting sick. It was strange to think about. 80, I said, factoring in my mother's age. Not a bad guess, but a little low. I turned 101 last week. That is impossible, I said, chuckling at the preposterousness of her claim. Oh, it is far from impossible. I was born April 2nd, 1915. I can show you my birth certificate if you'd like. I studied her face and decided that she must be lying. A centenarian could never look this good. Strangely, even though I had not seen her in 20 years, she did not look much different. Her hair was a little whiter and her skin a bit more wrinkled, but her eyes were the same, strong and full of life. Let me ask you this, Teresa. When was the last time you remember seeing my hands? This was another interesting question, and one I had to think hard about. I thought back to my summers here as a child and realized I had never seen her without her lavender gloves. Oddly, I do not think I have ever seen them. You have always worn gloves. You are correct. Now please, stay seated. I do not want you to be alarmed, my grandma said, standing up from the table in a smooth motion. There was no struggle in her movement. A woman of her age should not move that gracefully. My grandma took one of her lavender gloves and slowly pulled it off. Underneath the satin fabric was a small, delicate hand, whose skin was pure as milk. There was not a single wrinkle or any visible veins. It was the hand of a young woman. But how? I said, astounded. Wait, it gets much more interesting, she responded with a smile. My grandma raised her hands to her snow-white hair and tugged. As the wig came off, a cascade of long golden hair fell to her shoulders. It was healthy and beautiful. Who are you? I said nervously. I was beginning to get scared. Someone was impersonating my grandma. It is me, child. Listen to my voice, she said softly. She was right. It was her unmistakable voice. Now, this will be the worst part. I need you to stay calm, she said, reaching up to her forehead. Her manicured nails dug into her skin and ripped the highly detailed latex mask from her face. My jaw dropped. Underneath the disguise was a portrait of a young, beautiful woman, no older than 20. Everything had changed except the eyes. They were just as when I was a child. What the hell? I said, stumbling up out of the chair, my heart pounding from my chest. I know how shocking this must be, but do not be scared. It is me, your grandmother. But how? I was listening closely to her distinctive voice. We are descendants of a very rare ancestry, down our matriarchal line. You and I are very special people, and now that your mother has passed, it is time you learn who you really are. I promise to explain everything over a cup of tea, something I have been eagerly awaiting for a very long time. But we are forbidden to ever drink your tea, I said. That was true until today. I reluctantly sat back at the table and stared at this woman who claimed to be my grandma. My hands were shaking, and I was struggling to breathe as I processed this strange turn of events. She walked over to her china cabinet and pulled a small teacup and saucer from inside. It was off-white porcelain with hand-painted floral patterns, identical to one she had always used. She carefully placed it on the table. This is yours, Teresa. It is very old. Do not let anything happen to it. Breaking it would be the ultimate tragedy. She grabbed the teapot from the table as a faint trace of steam rose from its spout, and poured a small cup of tea for us both. It was light brown in color. When finished, she peered at me, her eyes encouraging me to drink. I put the cup to my lips and sipped. Ugh, I said, gagging on the foul-tasting drink. What is this? Poison? Quite the opposite, she said, chuckling. The taste will get better in time. Eventually you will come to enjoy its flavor. I can't drink this. It tastes like it was pulled from a septic tank. Just give it a moment, she said, taking a long sip of her cup. What do you mean? Do you feel any different? If you're talking about a horrible taste in my mouth, then yes. Oh yes, forgive me. I forgot. It may take a bit longer to act than my own. Go on and take another sip. I assure you it is safe. I will not. That stuff is vile. You will change your mind here shortly, she said calmly. I leaned back in my chair as the wave of euphoria trickled through my body. It was like a switch had been flipped. When I arrived here, I had been angry, jet-lagged, and utterly exhausted. I had slept little more than a few hours since my mother's passing. But now, a surge of euphoric energy was pulsating inside me, like a hit of pure cocaine, but different. It didn't feel like a drug. What the hell is going on? I said, the effect intensifying with every breath. Finish the drink. What you are experiencing now is only the beginning. Without hesitation, I emptied the contents down my throat. The taste was worse the second time, but it didn't matter. I wanted more. As the next wave of tea hit my stomach, I felt an ever stronger explosion of energy permeate my entire body. It was incredible, like the world's greatest drug was pumping through my veins. But instead of high, I felt alert, clear-headed, and best of all, alive. "What did you give me?" I said. "Welcome to afternoon tea, my dear. Now please, come with me." My grandma took my hand, her skin as soft as a child, and led me away from the tea room. I was floating high in ecstasy as we moved along her marble-laid corridors. Everything was perfect until something bad happened. "Something's wrong with my eyes. I can't see," I exclaimed, as my vision suddenly became extremely blurry. I could only see fuzzy patches of color. My grandma reached up and pulled off my glasses. It was like I had a blindfold removed. The world around me came into sharp focus, with an incredible clarity I had never experienced before. Ever since my early 20s, I had worn glasses or contacts, and my vision had continually gotten worse from that point on. "How is your vision, Teresa?" Grandma said, with a gleeful pitch in her voice. "This is incredible," I said, astounded that I could see everything in perfect detail. "What happened to my eyes?" "They're healing." "Healing? But how?" "That is only the beginning." We traveled deep into the manor, towards Grandma's ground-floor bedroom suite. Adjacent to her bedroom was the closet, a closet which was bigger than my entire apartment. It was loaded with racks and racks of expensive clothing and shoes. We went inside, and she guided me in front of her mirrors. "The change will be subtle at first, but take a hard look at yourself and tell me what you see." I stared deeply into the wall of mirrors, my naked eyes inspecting with newfound precision. There was something different, but I could not pinpoint it. "What am I looking for?" I said. "Look closely at your face." I moved closer to the mirror and studied my face. It was my wrinkles. While still visible, they were lessened considerably. I looked like I had good night's sleep and professional makeup applied. The bags under my eyes were gone. The sun marks had lighted, and my hair looked vibrant and alive. The gray roots had faded away. Holy shit! I look 5 years younger. "Precisely," she said with a grin. "How is this possible?" "This is your inheritance, Teresa." "My inheritance?" "You have been given a very special gift, a gift that has been passed down in our family since the early 18th century. It is extraordinarily powerful. What you are experiencing now is just a sample of its full potential, which is beyond your wildest imagination. But to realize this power, I must first give you a choice. Either you can forget any of this ever happened and return home, or you stay with your old grandmother and join me tomorrow for afternoon tea. The choice is yours. I've had your room prepared by Jeffrey. I assume you still remember where it is." "Of course. How could I forget?" "Stay for the night, explore the stables as you did as a child, and come to a decision. Return to your life as you once knew it, or travel down a rabbit hole. I do hope you choose the latter, and then maybe you will come to understand the decisions I have made in my life." And with that she left, to where I did not know. But one thing was certain, I did not need time to reflect on a decision. She had me at that first sip. I was heading down the rabbit hole. I entered the tea room precisely at 3 o'clock. Tea time had always been 3 p.m. in my grandma's house. Although neither my mother nor I had ever participated, we could always see her, behind the glass, sipping her afternoon tea as she watched display in the garden. Grandma was already seated, wearing a beautiful sequined black gown. There was no mask. She was still the young, beautiful woman I met yesterday. Apparently, the need for a disguise had concluded. She smiled as I walked in. No doubt pleased I decided to come. On the table were 2 cups and a teapot, steam pouring from the spout. "Hello, dear. I'm glad you decided to come," she said. "How could I resist?" I replied, taking a seat at the table. "Truly," she said, nodding. "I was in your position once, a very long time ago." I did not respond. My attention focused on the kettle. "You want more, don't you?" she said. It was incredible. I haven't felt like that in years." "And how do you feel today?" "Still different, but nothing like I did yesterday. Unfortunately, the effect is not permanent. It must constantly be maintained." "What is it?" "The tea, I mean." "It's complicated," she said, pouring the tea into my cup. "Now sip this slowly. It is much better that way." I pulled the cup to my lips and took a sip. I gagged briefly, but kept it down. "Tell me what this is." "Soon enough, my dear," she said, taking a sip. "Are you ready to hop down the rabbit hole?" "I'm ready," I said, greedily taking another sip of the hot, rancid tea. "You and I were born in a very special family. Unfortunately, I know very little of our origins, but one thing is unquestionable. We have been blessed with a remarkable gift. It is your inheritance, revealed to you at your mother's passing. The source of this gift has been lost, but lucky for us, the benefit remains. What I do know is this. Our power comes strictly from the tea you are consuming, with nothing more required. Now this blend here," she said, holding up her cup, "it has a significantly stronger effect on me than it will you." "Why is that?" "Well, because it is a unique blend, tailored specifically for me. Soon you have your personal blend, precisely brewed for your own use. When consumed, it will transform your entire life in a matter of minutes." "Like what happened to my eyesight?" "That is a small part of it, but the effect is more comprehensive than that. In its simplest explanation, the tea could be described as a fountain of youth. That exquisite beauty you enjoyed as a young woman will all be yours again, only now it will be amplified. Imagine being a young, beautiful woman, but never needing makeup or ever watching what you eat. You will have the metabolism and stamina of a professional athlete, easily able to accomplish any physical task you attempt. Your skin will be flawless and perfectly colored, without the need of any products. That long black hair of yours, well, it will be perfect. Every single day. Your body will be the epitome of health. Getting sick will be a distant memory, erased from your life like the wrinkles from your eyes. You will look like you are 18 years old again." 18 years old? Are you serious? "Very. Here, take a look at yourself," Grandma said, handing me a small brass mirror. As I peered at my reflection, my face was already looking brighter and healthy. I was changing with each sip. "And I won't get sick?" "I have not had so much as a cough in the past 70 years, she said. "Is that how long you have been using this?" "Yes, it is around that number. This is a very powerful asset. All of this, you see, my youth, my extreme wealth, have all derived from drinking this tea. How did your youth bring you such incredible wealth? In many ways. The easiest method is simple enough: seduction and manipulation. Combine a wise mind with the body of a goddess, and you have a lethal combination. Men are like flies. Put out some honey and they buzz into the trap, billfolds and all. They are simple creatures. However, that is not your only weapon. The world has changed, and women of today can make own way without the need of powerful men. You see, youth and beauty are not the only benefits. It also purifies the brain of all its imperfections, resulting in vastly improved function. Your intellect will increase tenfold. You will soak up and retain vast amounts of information with ease, as long as you continue to drink from this cup. Amassing great wealth with these attributes is simple. This sounds all too good to be true. In some ways it is. I would be lying if I told you there was not a cost. However, I find it pales in comparison to the benefits. You may or may not feel the same way. What is the cost? Your mother, she said. My mood soured. With all the excitement, I had forgotten about her. What happened to her? I said, a revitalized anger rising to the surface. I loved your mother dearly, Teresa. Everything I did, the distant relationship, avoiding her funeral, it was all for her own good. But we will cross that path soon enough. For now, just remember there is a profound cost, and you alone must decide if that cost is worth it. For me, it was. Our family gift is passed down on the matrilineal bloodline. Unfortunately, the ability to use it always skips a generation. I inherited it from my grandmother, whose grandmother passed it on to her, and so on for the last 3 centuries. It was revealed to me on the day my own mother died, and today I pass it to you. Sadly, your mother was unable to receive the gift, and thus it could only come to you, my only granddaughter. Cassandra, like your mother, cannot receive its power. It is reserved for your eventual granddaughter. If Cassandra does not bear a female child, the gift will end. I sat back, deep in thought, and continued to sip the disgusting brew. It was bitter and grainy, but with each sip, it delivered more of what I was craving. My physical senses were all heightened. Hearing, touch, smell, sight. It was all so vivid and clear. This was truly a miracle. Now that you understand the immense power, it is the time I reveal the source, which I must warn is incredibly unsettling. I can still vividly remember the day I learned the dark secret of its power. It was very difficult, but I assure you, the negative feelings will pass once you ingest your first cup of tea. What is so great about the first cup? Everything, she said, a smile curling upon her lips. It is specifically blended for you. The blend we have been consuming, it belongs to me. It can only give you a brief glimpse behind the curtain. To reveal all, you must consume it at full strength. After your first cup, you will look 30 and feel 20. This effect will last for several days, but if you drink it daily, well, that is where the real magic happens. You will be thrust into the prime of your life, armed with an assortment of weapons you never had access to the first time around. Nothing can stop you. There is no death. No death? Correct. Let's say someone you trust tries to take your life, something which, given your power, will probably happen at least once. Jealousy is a nasty beast. Imagine you are stabbed. Well, that's no problem at all. Your body will just heal itself almost instantly. Strangulation? Doesn't matter. You will just keep breathing. No illness or disease can ever harm you. You will be, while under its effect, immortal. I was stunned. Imagining this must all be a dream. Immortality? Eternal beauty? More money than I could spend. It all seemed too good to be true. Tell me how to make it. I am ready, I said. I was through waiting. The $1,000,000 question. Well, no use putting it off any longer. You will either accept it or not. What's the catch? It must be important. Finish your drink. It is better I show you. I took the last swig, wincing as it went down. As I stood up, I felt no more pain in my knees, and my lungs, well, I bet that I could run a marathon on a single breath. Come this way, my grandma said. What you are about to learn will seem disturbing and grotesque at first, but I need you to remain calm and think of the bigger picture. This is an amazing opportunity for you, Teresa. Please try and understand that. Where are we going? I asked as we walked down a small, dark hallway. One I had never seen before. You want to know the catch? Yes, I said. Well, it's a big one. At the end of the hallway was a dead end. Grandma's fingers touched the wallpaper and delicately drew a pattern. It was some sophisticated hidden keypad. She then pressed her palm on the wall, and a hidden door slid open. Cold air rushed out towards us. What is this place? I asked. This is my freezer. Inside the hidden room was a small table with various items on it. At the far side was a large steel door. A door to a walk-in freezer. I felt a bit of nervousness sweep up through me, briefly damping the euphoria. It is time. Behind this door is the truth, she said, slowly opening the freezer door. A fluorescent light flickered to life just as I looked inside. I turned my head, enraged, hacking up the tea from my belly. The hell? I shrieked, staring at the corpse, which lay stiff on a gurney. The body had been mutilated. The left leg and arm were gone. It was the body of a woman. Teresa, this is my mother. She was your great-grandmother, she said flatly. My great-grandmother? I said, shaking with fear. What the heck is she doing in your freezer? Well, my dear, this is the catch. My grandma grabbed a large knife that hung from a ring and approached the body. The dead woman was nude, and to my amazement, looked surprisingly good for a century-old corpse. Without hesitation, my grandma went straight for the right thigh and hacked off a small piece of the hardened flesh. I almost spilled up more tea, but I watched, hypnotized in a paralyzed shock. After removing the flesh, she left the freezer and approached the table. She placed the flesh into a small grinder. Seconds later, it was morphed into a fine powder, which she dumped onto the table. Once I saw her grab the empty tea bag, I understood. This is afternoon tea? I said, horrified. This is the secret. How could you do such a thing? That is your mother. Unfortunately, This is the only way it works. Our life is drawn from their death. The realization hit me like an oncoming train. I understood how to make my blend. You don't mean... do you? I said, not wanting to believe it. It is the only way. To obtain the key to unlimited youth, you must continue down the same road as your ancestors. Do you honestly think I would hack up my mother and drink her? All those years away from us have warped your mind. What you choose is solely yours. I am just here to show you the way, as you must do for your granddaughter when Cassandra passes. You can't be serious. Cassandra will never be some extract so that some fictitious granddaughter can follow this path. I understand how difficult this is to comprehend. I have stood in your shoes, but I am not here to convince you, only to show you the way. I will never, I said firmly. Fine, but please, you must let me finish. It is my duty. I am sworn to reveal everything to you. Get it over with, I demanded. You will need your mother's body. This will not be a problem. Soon you will understand that anything is possible with the power of money. I suggest keeping the body frozen, as I have done. It will last much longer, and it eliminates the nasty side effects associated with the dead. You must drink at least a cup a week to stay healthy, and keep a median age around 30. To get all the benefits and relive your youth, then you must drink a cup per day. If my calculations are correct, freezing and conserving her body, and only living half the year drinking a cup a day, you will survive at least another 200 years. You can extend that number an additional 100 years with proper rationing. How can you talk like this? So apathetic. This is your daughter we are talking about, your flesh and blood. You think I do not know that, my grandma said, a hint of anger in her voice. You don't think a part of me regrets this life? It is worse than just consuming her body, much worse. What did you do to her? I said, anger seething from my insides. Have you ever wondered why your life was so shitty growing up? Why you were always poor? And why your mother always seemed to have the worst possible luck? What are you saying? The gift requires a cyclical process. While I became younger, she became older. I got rich. She had to be poor. I was healthy. She was not. This path requires the ultimate sacrifice. Your only daughter. The moment you begin to consume, her life begins its decline. She will experience a rough life, but she will scrape by and survive, and eventually give birth to a daughter. That child will be the one of us and inherit the gift. She too will enjoy a wonderful life. Cassandra will give her child the greatest gift imaginable, as your mother gave you. It is quite noble if you think about it. That is not my choice to make. How incredibly selfish do you think I am? Maybe now you can understand my absence and why I could barely stomach seeing your mother more than once a year. And I only went that far because I wanted to see you. It was devastating to see her falling, while I had it all. Early on I tried to stay, but it was too much. So I moved to England. I disguised myself and hid the secret from you all. What about the last 20 years? Where were you then? I knew she would get very sick. It was inevitable. I couldn't handle watching her suffer and die. And it was your fault. You disgusting woman, I said, glaring at her with disdain. It had to be done. I did it all for you. Don't you understand? I am done with this. I am leaving. It would be a cold day in hell before I would ruin my daughter's life. I understand, she said quietly. Be aware, though. I anticipated this reaction and made some choices for you. Goodbye, Grandma. I will not be returning, I said, turning away from her porcelain-like face. I was on the next plane home to L.A. that afternoon. I arrived home, beat and exhausted. The tea's effects had faded, and I was now back to my old self, trudging up the stairs to my one-bedroom apartment. I almost thought how great it was to be home, until I saw a passed-out junkie on the walkway just outside my door. Cassandra was at her father's, staying at his Malibu beach house, with that bitch of a stepmother, Kelsey. It should be me living there with my family, but instead, I am stuck here, old and alone. Seeing my grandma's estate again only intensified the pile of shit that was my life. But at least I would see Cassandra in the morning. I missed her. Just as I went to open the door, I got a text message. Cassandra. Hi, Mom. Hope you got home okay. Going to stay Dad's for the week. Kelsey got me a horse and is taking me riding up in Napa Valley. I hope you don't mind. See you later. My hand shook as I read the message. She had been spending so much more time with her father lately. It wouldn't be long until she fled for college, leaving her lonely mother behind. She had grown up so damn fast. As I opened my door, there were footsteps at my back. It was a delivery man. Miss Taylor? The man said. He was holding a box. Yes, that's me. I have an urgent delivery for you. This box and a freezer. The freezer is still on the truck. It was her. That despicable old bag did not get the hint. I did not want her path. But I also did not want my mother being dragged around inside a box truck for the foreseeable future. Bring it up, I said reluctantly. I would get her back to the cemetery somehow. Yes, ma'am, he said, retreating down the steps. I entered my apartment and examined the box. It had been sent overnight from England. I ripped it open, and inside was a letter and 8 small teacups. They were all identical. I opened the letter and began to read. Dear Teresa, I am sorry that we parted company under such unsavory conditions. However, I do not hold it against you. What you saw is shocking and difficult to understand, but if you are reading this, then you know that I have arranged for a freezer to be delivered. Yes, your mother is inside. If this angers you, then please send me a message and I will have her placed back in the cemetery. However, if you choose to follow in your ancestors' footsteps, there are some rules you must follow. As I continued to read, the man came in the apartment with a freezer. Where do you want it, ma'am? In the back room, please, I said, and the man put it there and plugged in. I signed for it and he left. I continued to read. 1. Conserve. To make your supply last, you must pace yourself. It can be extremely intoxicating to spend every day in youth, but you must restrain yourself. You will understand soon enough. 2. For your mental well-being, I strongly suggest you begin to put distance between you and Cassandra. It is in her best interest not to know the truth. You may need to move away, as I did so many years ago. 3. Safeguard the cups. If they are broken beyond repair, the gift is extinguished. 4. A piece of flesh no bigger than a penny is all that is needed. Steep the bag 3 times. Each bag can be reused to make 30 cups. Every part of the body will work, including bone. Let nothing go to waste. 5. The first cup will have a very intense effect. Be prepared. Your body will go through a drastic change in a very short period. I suggest being alone. 6. Create a nest egg. You will need lots of money. Use it to develop some alternate identities. Hire only people you can trust with your secret, like Jeffrey. Pay these people handily to keep your secret. 7. When Cassandra passes, you must relay our secret to your granddaughter. Give her the rest of the cups I have included, and tell her our method. The gift is in your hands now. That is all. Everything else will come to you in time. I hope you decide to visit. We have much to discuss. Remember, my door is always open for you, Teresa. With love, Grandma Terry. I put the letter down, my hands trembling, and rushed to the bathroom. I bent over the toilet with an urge to vomit, but it never came. When I stood up, I looked deep into the mirror at the woman I had become. Without the tea's beneficial effect, I was reverted to my previous self, old and weathered, haggard from the years of abuse I had inflicted on my body. All that partying from my 20s caught up with me, and I had lost everything. Now I was just another middle-aged woman, lost in the endless sea of ordinary people, and I hated ordinary. Gone were the days as a teen, where time was spent laying in the sun, tanning my golden body. Endless free vacations and gifts brought by men who barely knew me, all vying for my attention. My meteoric rise up the California social scene, where I was someone making waves with the rich and famous. Then I got pregnant, and everything came crashing down. My body was ruined, and along with it, all my aspirations. Cassandra's father was a successful Hollywood producer, a pretentious asshole who dumped me as soon as he found out. With no formal education or job prospects, I was left penniless to raise my daughter on my own. Only years later did he come around and became the now doting father. He proceeded to spoil her rotten, garnering her favor, while I was left dealing with the most challenging portions of parenting. Cassandra, oblivious to the struggles I endured as a poor single mother, came to love her father. And why wouldn't she? He could give her anything she desired. And now, she barely came to see me anymore, spending ever more time with her new, hip stepmother. All the while her mother rotted alone, working a crappy minimum wage job, living in a shitty subsidized apartment. I screamed and then cried until there was nothing left but anger. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and moved slowly into my bedroom. The compressor hummed. Was she really inside? I took a deep breath and pulled the hatch. Inside was my mother, crammed in the fetal position. It was the only way to fit a body inside. To my relief, her head was covered with a black hood. After a brief hesitation, I went for it, slicing a small piece of flesh from her forearm. It was easier than I had expected. I shut the freezer and went to the kitchen where I pulled a coffee grinder from the cabinet. I ground the flesh into a powdery mix, exactly how my grandma had done. Then I wrapped the powder in the small napkin and steeped it in some boiling water. I had brewed my first cup of tea. It was brown and smelled foul, but I salivated with anticipation. He will lust for me once more. However, this time, it will be his life that is ruined, not mine. I sat back, thanked my mother, and took my first sip.
I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's video. I want to thank affectionately 677, who wrote the first story that I narrated, as well as 242, who voiced Gabby and her mom, Whispering Scream, who narrated a story written by Rob from the Haunted Tales podcast. Jack Harrison, who wrote and narrated his own stories. Structure Hefty 5113, who wrote the second story that I narrated. Lady Spookaria, who narrated and wrote her own story. Creepy Crowleys, who narrated a story by Jade Green. Dr. Torment, who narrated some classic horror by H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. Narrative Strokes, who narrated a story by N.P.C.O. I also want to thank my patrons, and especially my first, Shadow Thread Stories.